Hello on Friday, January the 13th, as we enter into what is going to be, I guess, kind of a perhaps raucous, rough and tumble election for 2024, as the campaigning began before the last midterm election actually even ended. We are now, I guess, in perpetual election or electioneering mode. And one of the things that I've been wondering about for quite a while crosses my mind from time to time, and I commented on this briefly in a couple of other videos. And I want to try to start a video uh, sequence that addresses this topic in more detail, a more focused way. And this is how political should Christians be as Christians. And I'm coming at this looking for information that you have, thoughts you have on the topic. As I try to reflect on how I recall or understand in my development over time, a few decades now, how I remember hearing growing up in an evangelical Christian Southern Baptist church uh, that church and state should be related. Uh, the transition that I think took place in large part with the forming of the moral majority and the involvement of evangelical churches and other churches on the political right as a distinct political force, and in contest in a way with churches that are deemed to be on the political left, generally viewed as being more liberal from a theological and a social perspective. And those are all issues that I want to get into down the way. But my basic question is, how political should Christians be as Christians, particularly in the context of the United States of America? And I realize and would like to talk about how this ties back into our founding as a nation and the involvement, the religious background of many who came over seeking religious freedom, amongst all the other reasons that people had for coming to what, from the European perspective, was the New World. And I don't want to deny at all the basic framework of the Western world, European world in particular, with respect to general Christian presupposition, outlook on the world, worldview, if you will. But I do want to raise a question with respect to, given how America was founded, the founding documents, the founding ideals, to what degree has Christianity, particularly evangelical Christianity, in the late 20th and early 21st century, compromised its religious faith message in the interest of political gain in such a way that the political gains that represent, perhaps directly, ideals of the Christian faith are hollow victories, in that the principles of Christianity and ultimately the fundamental gospel message of Christianity is lost on the world, or the door is closed by the very nature of how politics operates to someone hearing the gospel message from someone who claims to be a Christian or to be acting in the interest of Christianity in the context of political engagement, overtly political engagement. Now, I'm not saying that Christians should not be in politics. I'm not saying that politics doesn't function better, as I would suggest everything else functions better in the context of a Christian moral, ethical framework. My question is whether the degree to which Christians are identified as political entities or affiliates, what message is then ultimately being heard and what message is being lost on the rest of the world, particularly in the context of America, where we do have freedom and freedom to vote, and I think everybody should vote. I'm not arguing against that at all. But the thing that I'm challenged by and I want to ask us to consider, amongst other things we'll consider along the way, is to what degree does our political involvement as Christians, to what degree has our political involvement as Christians compromised any effort to communicate the gospel as citizens of America, citizens of the United States? And there are several reasons that I asked this question, and we'll get into those in later videos. I just wanted to raise this question now because there are several things. In fact, one of the things I hope to do is put out kind of a political agenda for the 2024 elections. And as you'll see when I get that together and start talking about it, that I am personally conservative, and I think conservative ideals, which I'll define more clearly later, but basically framed on an ideal Christian framework, are the best way to live life. But as someone who believes in individual freedom and the ideals that all of us can make decisions on our own based on the information we have, and that part of the hope for America is that we can agree to disagree in a civil way and still function as a society, which also allows different ideas to be represented and followed and lived by for success or failure. Another issue that we'll get to later, the idea that everybody ought to succeed, is not just a left idea, it's a right idea as well. Hence, I would suggest many of the economic ideals have been abandoned in the effort to make sure that everybody succeeds economically who has succeeded or who is deemed they ought to succeed, as opposed to actually allowing failures to take place when merited. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into all the weeds on all that. I just want to basically raise this question and begin to look at, in one stream or sequence of videos, the degree to which politically Christians should be involved as Christians, as opposed to, or in contrast to, being Christians who are politicians in the way they handle themselves and the direction that their votes may go or may not go, in the context of recognizing their place, their part in the political framework of which we are a part. And I think that the answer, the discussion for this question, is drastically different than we would have if we were talking about this in the context of Iran or China or North Korea or any other number of places you might want to mention. And I think that the difference is part of the reason that we may have crossed a line in with respect to being effective Christians in society, rather than focusing on being effective Christian political operatives in society. Well, let me just stop there with that observation and these observations. And again, I look forward to hearing what you have to say in response to just the opening comments, and hope to use your comments, your observations, to think better myself about the topic and to facilitate additional discussions on this topic. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.